Hi there, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast.
For 15 years now, we've been proudly helping breeders promote hundreds of thousands of pedigree livestock with our easy-to-use animal management-driven website software.
And let's not forget about Hired Hand Live, where over $1 million worth of livestock is sold online each year.
We're excited to bring you market trends, sales data, advice from your fellow breeders, and stories from the ranch.
Our software makes managing your website and your animals a breeze, so you can focus on what you love.
So let us handle your digital chores while you tune in to another episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Welcome to this episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Today we're thrilled to have Kristin Jaworski, the trail boss of the Fort Worth herd, joining us. For those unfamiliar with it, the Fort Worth herd is the world's only twice-daily cattle drive, showcasing the iconic Texas Longhorns in the heart of the Fort Worth Stockyards. This incredible program that celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2024 commemorates Fort Worth's deep-rooted history in the American West. The herd consists of 17 Texas Longhorn steers, each representing a decade since the city's founding in 1849. These beautiful animals are driven by a dedicated team of cowhands who are keeping the spirit of the Old West alive. Today we'll be talking with Kristin about what it takes to manage this historic herd, its legacy, and how some of our own customers have contributed their Longhorns to the program. We'll also explore ways for registered Longhorn breeders to get involved. Let's dive into this fascinating world of the Fort Worth herd. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kristin.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. We're so happy that you thought of us, and we're excited to share our story.
Well, let's go ahead and get right into it. So for our listeners who might not be familiar, can you just tell us what the Fort Worth herd is and why it's such a special part of the history and culture of Fort Worth?
Absolutely. Your introduction was great. So the Fort Worth herd twice daily Longhorn cattle drive was created by the city of Fort Worth on June 12th of 1999 to celebrate Fort Worth's 150th year anniversary. And it was just a great opportunity. City officials and stakeholders in the community really value holding on to Western heritage, and they wanted to bring some of that history back. So they formed a herd of Texas Longhorn steers and hired some guys that they named drovers, put them on horseback, made everything authentic, and that was the birth of the Fort Worth herd twice daily cattle drive. Ever since then, we've been driving Longhorn cattle right down East Exchange Avenue twice daily at 11:30 and 4 o'clock.
What do you think their vision kind of was for this program, or do you think it's far exceeded that, with celebrating your 25th anniversary in 2024?
I came on board just a little bit after the herd was started. But the leaders shared with me some incredible stories. It did exceed their expectations. I don't think they expected it to be as popular as it was. So their mission was to commemorate a time in history when Longhorns were driven through Fort Worth. It made such a huge impact on the economy. And in sharing that story of where those roots in Fort Worth actually came from and the impact that made, not just on agriculture, but to showcase the Texas Longhorn, the horse, the utility of the horse, and the American cowboy. It was a mission of theirs to educate people. And so when they launched that program, there were some ideas that it might be seasonal, it might be, drive them out to the river, let them graze. But it was so popular that it was every single day because the demand was here. People from all over the world were coming to see the Longhorn.
I can remember the first time that I was there, and Longhorns weren't anything new to me, right? I was used to seeing them all the time. But what I couldn't stop watching were the people watching the Longhorns, those that you could tell had never maybe even seen a cow before, to those who just were, in awe of you all driving them down the old brick streets. It's truly a sight to behold.
Molly, I think that's the best part of my job is, early on, we were so excited to have 300,000 or 400,000 people in the stockyards that would visit. And that was a lot of people. This year, we're on target to hit 9 million visitors. That's a lot of first-time introductions to the horse and the Texas Longhorn. And so I completely understand, even though I see them every single day, I'm fascinated that we're able to drive them down the street for so many people. And their reactions, it just warms your heart.
So, how do you think that huge number of visitors and watchers, how do you think that plays into preserving the legacy and the history of Longhorns, as well as what the Fort Worth herd overall is doing?
I think it's more important now than ever because technology is changing so much, and just the world and the culture in general. You see Western heritage being represented in different disciplines, whether it be rodeo, cutting, reining, the English jumping world, whatever that is that somebody is interested in. Television has certainly helped. I remember when we first started the herd, everybody had seen the John Wayne movies and they thought that's what this was going to be like. Now everybody's watching Yellowstone and they think that that's what cowboys are like. And there's a certain part of that that has really helped the industry. And I think it's opened the door for us to continue to really showcase agriculture.
Well, those of us that know that it's not exactly like how Yellowstone portrays it, one thing I picked up on that you mentioned at first with that first question is this probably is truly a dream job for a lot of those drovers and a lot of the folks, yourself included, involved with this, probably can't think of a better thing to do day in and day out than drive the cattle down those historic streets.
I think we're pretty fortunate. I do think that it requires passion. You have to appreciate Western heritage. You have to, there's a lot of people that ride horses, a lot of people that work cattle. But so far, including myself, none of us have ever driven Longhorns down the middle of a city street for a living. And that is what makes this program so unique, is because our team is basically built of this group of folks that would have such diverse backgrounds, but they all have to know how to ride a horse and have to be somewhat familiar with cattle because the Longhorn is very different than some beef breeds, as you well know. And then we're in an environment that's very, what I would call unorthodox. It's very different. It's not like anything, nobody's raising cattle in the middle of the city like this.
Well, how do you think that the herd fits into the overall experience visitors have to Fort Worth? Are there any like regular events or interactions aside from the daily, trail drive that people can expect?
I think that's a very good question. When you're planning your visit to Fort Worth, we are ambassadors for the city. So our mission and our goal when we come in, one-on-one contact and a conversation with a visitor is we want them, of course, to see the cattle drive. But after that cattle drive, we want them to engage in our museums, retail, the culinary scene. We want to push them into other parts of the city where the museums are just impeccable. We have a world-class zoo. There's so many things to offer here in Fort Worth, not just in the stockyards, but just in the city in general. And so our job is to basically be a visitor center on horseback. And anything you want to know, we're happy to answer the best of our ability.
How do you keep the public engaged and informed about the importance of Texas Longhorns and Texas history?
So we have an educational element that's part of the program. We call it the herd experience. And so we might just be doing our normal daily duties. It could be feeding the steers, cleaning, watering, exercising, working the cattle. Everything is very low stress. And I think that's a teachable moment to teach people how to properly handle cattle, whether it be the Texas Longhorn or another breed. And that education really comes every single day. When we're doing our normal job, we are in the public eye. So because it is so high profile, there's all these opportunities to teach people about the breed. And you just never know who you're talking to. It might be somebody that's stepping into the industry that has a little bit of curiosity. And our job is to make those contacts with breeders to get them started.
Well, let's switch gears and talk a little bit specifically about your role with the herd. So, what can you share, about your journey becoming the trail boss and how you got started and what keeps you passionate?
Well, sure. Trail boss itself is a very unique title. It usually takes quite a bit of explaining. I did not grow up thinking that I would be in this role. I recently was visiting with some state FFA officers at the collegiate level, and they asked, was this your goal? Absolutely not. I, went to college, thought I was going to do something different. And I think my passion has always been with livestock, but on a very small scale, just not really, had a grasp on what it really took. And early on, I learned to listen to mentors, whether it be professors or, leaders, other people that had just done a whole lot more than I had. And their advice was really challenging. It was find what you're good at, what you can exceed at, but also what you care about. Because if you care about it, you'll do a better job. And this position brought me a little bit of everything that I love. I love tourism. I just am fascinated by the visitor experience. I love being a visitor in different destinations. This job acts as a perfect destination marketing tool for the city. So we're marketing, we're working in tourism, and we're using horses and cattle to do that. But the most important part of this job that I love the most is the leadership aspect. If I can make a difference, even if it's 1% a day or to, anybody on the team, if they can teach me and I can teach them, I think we're better people. I think we're better stewards of the industry, but then also, at home with our families and just better people overall. So I love leading a team. I have an incredible team. Without them, that twice daily cattle drive wouldn't happen.
Well, I have to say, coming from another female in agriculture, which, as not, well, maybe there are now, but there didn't used to be tons of us out there, right? I think it's really empowering to see specifically a female trail boss, because I would imagine that could have gone a lot of different ways. And maybe, a lot of the visitors are expecting to see, a man in that role. So I think it's awesome. And that you've found a way, like you said, to kind of combine all your passions.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. I try not to act or treat myself as if I'm different. And it has had its challenges, I will say. And most of those challenges were just, people had different expectations. And then when they realized that this job, regardless of if it's male or female, we do the same work. I might not be as physically strong as some of the guys, and they recognize that. But they're very respectful, and the team over the years has just really helped me grow as an individual. And I think that's really special. Of course, just like any job, it has its challenges, whether it be personnel or budget or livestock or, just day-to-day operations and logistics. But I don't know, those challenges, I guess, are what pushed me through.
Well, speaking of the day-to-day, walk me through a typical day in the life of the herd and what you do.
Sure. We start early just like everybody who has livestock does, and we're feeding horses and we're cleaning stalls and we're picking up every piece of manure on the property and making sure that it is a good fit in the stockyards. We're saddling and grooming horses. We're exercising those horses. Horsemanship skills are paramount because safety is going to be the most important thing here. We work very closely with the Certified Horsemanship Association. Myself, I am a certifier and a riding instructor. We also have what's called an equine facility manager certification and site accreditation. That's a conversation for another time, but that gives us some credibility that we do what we say we're going to do. It's not just a bunch of policies written on a wall. We actually operate that way, and I'm real proud of that. So we're real focused on the horsemanship side of things so that we can exercise the cattle, prepare them for the cattle drive. I like to say there's 7.5 hours of chores to do a 30-minute program, right? The show must go on at 11:30 and 4, but the behind the scenes is an awful lot of work. And it might be repairing fences or replacing a tire on the tractor or putting out hay. All of that happens on a daily basis. The most exciting part of the day is the public interaction, the public interface, is being able to tell our story and answer questions from people that are curious.
Well, had you been around Longhorns prior to this role? Or if not, can you kind of tell me about the first moment that you kind of made that, probably special connection to I'm sure you have a favorite, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but to the first Longhorn there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was raised around horses and mules and cattle on a very small scale. And they were beef, they were Hereford and totally different than the Texas Longhorn. My sister first introduced me to the Texas Longhorn. She ran the show circuit for a little while and was involved. But I still didn't pay that much attention. It wasn't something I knew I was going to pursue. And I think my education has came from being here on the job. And even just, early on, over 22, 23 years ago, I had to learn that these Longhorns were very different than what you might have in a pasture at home, that this was a different environment and that they had to be handled very quietly, very, very calm. That is exactly how you would handle them in a pasture, but our space is just limited and it does pose some challenges. So I think learning over the years, our Longhorns have certainly changed. They're a lot bigger now than they used to be. And watching that growth has taught me a lot. I learned the most from breeders and, specialized Longhorn handlers is what I would like to refer them to. I like to refer to them as, because they've taught me everything is different, from the trailer to the chute to how, you just can't crowd them. And you do have to manage them a little bit different. And of course, we've got that figured out now, but we constantly are working on our cattle handling.
Are there any skills or lessons from working with the Longhorns daily that you find yourself kind of applying to your life outside of work?
The first thing that comes to mind is pecking order. We can't influence it. We've tried, and everything that affects this herd, each dynamic, whether it be age, temperature, external sounds, space, who got turned out last month and who got brought back, or when we're retiring this year, when we're bringing a new one in. We've worked very closely with Dr. Temple Grandin on that dynamic. And what I've learned the most is they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. We can control the gates and the pens and their housing. But as far as the cattle, we let them figure that out, and no two cattle drives are the same. And it does tell a story what order that they choose to go down the street.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Looking for top quality Longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for Longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, Longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, Longhorns, and docile temperaments, but it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening, and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
Are you a new Longhorn breeder eager to educate yourself on market trends and sale prices? Stay in the loop with our text messages. Get the latest updates, events, and insider tips on all things Longhorns delivered straight to your phone.
Stay informed by texting website to 888-700-8131, then reply with Longhorns. That's website to 888-700-8131. Sign up today and take your breeding program to the next level.
If you could give yourself advice looking back on your first day as trail boss, knowing all that you know now, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, goodness. That is such a difficult question. Looking back, I would say the risk management side of things is probably the most difficult. And I would tell myself that I really need to depend on others and not take it all so personal and also heavy, because the longer you're in a position where you're concerned for other people's safety, whether it be staff, the public, the livestock, sometimes it can weigh on you. And I think I would tell myself to have something in place to help manage some of that, because this job never turns off, right? Even though the cattle drive is 7 days a week during the day, livestock do not care if it's Christmas or holidays or in the middle of a storm or 10 o'clock at night, as you all know. And so just doing a little more self-care and work-life balance would be probably what I would give myself advice on.
That's great advice. Let's talk about celebrating 25 years in 2024. So, what did that milestone mean to you and your team?
It's hard to even think about that we're 25 years old. So much has happened over the years. And what's really special about that milestone is how the city embraces it, and how when the city started the Fort Worth herd and then passed it over to Visit Fort Worth to manage it, there is a nonprofit support group called Friends of the Fort Worth Herd. And that is a group of volunteers from all over the city that embrace what we do, celebrate what we do, and then help support that financially through fundraising efforts. And our 25th year anniversary really opened the door for that to expand. And I think what I recognized is there's a lot of love for the herd program, for the Longhorns, for the drovers, for the horses, and what we do. And I think this conversation just showcases that. If it can spark some interest on how we can help support the breed and share the message, we've spent 25 years building a reputation, and we're ready to do so.
What if you had to pick just a few of your most memorable moments or achievements? What would they be over the past few years?
I think my favorite memories are milestones that were usually surrounded by events. My most challenging was we took the herd to New York City, the drive of 2005. And, I was just a small town kid. I certainly had never been to New York City. No less did I think I could, be part of bringing Longhorns and horses and drovers to Times Square. But we did, and it was incredible. And it put Fort Worth on the map as a premier travel destination. There were challenges, but that was probably my first experience of people working together for a common cause and overcoming challenges along the way. I mean, we had a huge blizzard, but we pushed through it. There were a lot of requirements that New York had that we weren't familiar with, and we were able to work through all of that. So that really laid the foundation for what else can we be a part of outside the twice daily cattle drive, because it was important that the actual program was not affected in the stockyards. And so everything we've ever done, we've never missed a cattle drive because of being pulled away for something else. We've commissioned the USS Fort Worth Navy combat ship on the pier, and that was pretty special to be part of something that not only the city is celebrating, but on a national level. We've been there to watch bridges and highways open. We've hosted race car drivers and reality TV shows and, celebrities from all over. And I think it's really rewarding that when the production side of an event looks at Fort Worth, they think about how can we involve the herd? How can the Longhorn be part of this? And I think those are probably my favorite memories.
Any TV or movie cameos you can tell us about, or are those pretty secretive?
No, not at all. I think that is really one of our main purposes for being here, is to generate publicity, whether it be through news media, travel writers, podcasts such as yourself, or if it's a TV show that is, we're hosting them here in Fort Worth through our film commission. One comes to mind. We did one called Battleground Earth, and it was on the DIY network, and it was with Tommy Lee, the drummer, and Ludacris, and then they brought the Cowboys football team involved. And for a TV show of that magnitude with those types of characters, and they wanted to be part of the stockyards and wanted to showcase the herd, I think it's a huge compliment, and it's also a teachable moment for the production crew as well as us. So we've had some fun shows that we've worked with.
Nice. Well, are you okay if I ask you a few kind of Longhorn specific questions? Maybe we talk about a few of your herd members?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start. Those of us that are, on another side of the breed, we tend to know that kind of Longhorns each have their own unique personalities, as you've also mentioned with the pecking order. Can you tell us just about if there's any kind of unique character traits in any of the animals in your herd?
What a great question, because we do have steers that rotate in and out throughout the years. And early on, it was really important to showcase color, horn, conformation. Sound familiar? And that was important to the city for the visitor experience. And so the initial herd was put together. The steers were donated from different breeders all across the country, really, and that continues to be the case. So when we're showcasing different colors, horn patterns, structure, size, as well as personality, it truly is reflective of the Longhorn breed. And some of our favorite steers are usually, the more timid steer that works his way into the herd, that rises to the top of the pecking order, eventually becomes a lead steer. And it's neat to see those stories, and it usually happens with age.
Well, tell me a little bit about Howdy. So he comes from Rafter H Longhorns.
So Howdy is special to us because of the relationship that we build with the donors and the particular families. And I'll never forget getting some of these phone calls, that from people that I had met, whether it be at a show or at the stock show, or they had just came down to the stockyards to visit and introduce themselves. And I would say all of our donors had that experience, right? We start with the relationship first, and then they have the passion and the desire to showcase their brand on that steer and handpick an animal for the herd program. And when we picked Howdy up, the excitement on their faces as he was loaded into the trailer, it was win-win because it was good for them, good for us, but also there's a certain element of sadness when an animal that you've raised, that you have brought into the ranch, is going off to do another job. And so just being really sensitive to those emotions, and knowing that donor, that breeder, is connected to us the rest of that steer's life and hopefully afterwards. So I love to send pictures and call them and tell them how they're doing. And of course, anytime they're in Fort Worth, everybody always comes to see their steer. And that's been the case with Howdy. Howdy's been very special to us. And we work very closely with A&M sometimes, and, just the region where these steers come from, there's always a story and a connection that's much bigger than just that steer.
Well, tell me a little bit about the story and the connection behind it. And I'm probably going to say it. You're going to have to correct me. Is it Tamakera?
Tamakera, yes.
And so he comes from our past customers. I believe they no longer have a large herd, but the Wamplers at T-Bar W Ranch. And he's, I know he's sired by Cowboy Tough Checks, but.
Yeah, he is. So that particular ranch and those folks have been very generous to us and asked the question, what are your needs? What can we do to help? And at that time, we had an opportunity to bless the herd with the Comanche tribe. And we had never done anything like that before. And so we did a naming contest. We did a blessing ceremony because we were gifted that steer as an unnamed young bull. And so we were able to take him in and transition him from pasture to the herd program and really showcase him in that celebration. And I'll never forget, it was also during the time where Fort Worth was hosting the National Finals Rodeo, and we were, a little confused with COVID and just not sure what to do. And Tamakera was our celebrity. And he's named after the Comanche Ben Tamakera, who is very special. And Ben actually rode with Ann Marion with the 4.6s in the inaugural cattle drive in '99. So everything has a really cool story to it. All of our steers and horses are named to tell a story and showcase that.
Well, another one that comes from the T-Bar W herd is Goodnight, and I believe he's the longest horned animal in your herd at 124 inches tip to tip. Is that still accurate?
So Goodnight and Chisholm were two steers that were donated at the same time. That was also an initiative, and it was a fundraising initiative of partner with the herd program, and we're bringing in these two new steers at one of our anniversary galas. And so that event was held at River Ranch, just here in the stockyards. And when we first received both of those steers, and they were just little bitty things. And to think that they have grown in this program into the largest tip-to-tip steers, and they're competing with each other. They are half brothers, like the tour guide likes to call them. And you see that reflected in the size of their horn and their horn pattern. I think what's special about that is, I had mentioned that the herd has grown over the years, not so much in numbers, but in size. And as the breeders are being more selective on bloodlines, we're starting to see a lot larger horn than we had in the past. And so Goodnight and Chisholm both definitely represent that.
Well, we've had the pleasure of working alongside auctioneer Bruce McCarty. We provide the internet bidding for some of the Longhorn sales through Hired Hand Live, and the McCartys donated Lil Tex to your herd. And I know he's a world champion mini Longhorn. Is that right?
That is correct. When you say, if you look back, would you ever expect to be doing some of the things that you do? Having a mini Longhorn in the herd was probably not on my radar. And so when that opportunity presented itself, that steer had been in the stockyards for several special events. And when I was asked if we wanted to accept him as a donation, my first thought was we would be able to continue doing special events. So if we received a call that there was a convention downtown and they wanted, a Longhorn to be part of their greeting committee, that we would do that. So Lil Tex came on board. And as you know, with any miniature Longhorn, he is significantly shorter than the others, and everybody thinks he's young. And then when we tell them, he's 8, 9 years old, they're surprised about that. So what it did is it opened up an opportunity for us to tell more story about the breed. And then we decided he probably should be shown. And there's a big trophy on the wall here that he acquired at the World Show. And that was pretty special. And we thought that could be a transition from him to go from a show steer to in the cattle drive. I wasn't sure how that was going to work out because he does like you to scratch his neck. But he doesn't stop and visit with the visitors on the street. He fit right in. The steers never bullied him. They never picked on him. He held his ground. He's what we would call the fun guy of the herd. There's always one, right, that's making jokes and laughing in the team. Well, Little Tex is that steer for us, and he's been a great addition.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how our listeners can get involved with the herd if they're interested. So what criteria do you look for when selecting Longhorns to join the herd?
That's probably one of the most frequently asked questions is, I've got a steer, how do I become part of the program? And so we developed a system that's very similar to applying for a job to be a drover. And so there is an application process, and we are very selective. We work very closely with some of the Longhorn breeders that are on our Friends of the Fort Worth Herd board in that selection process, because those members of the board are closely connected to you all as breeders, to the industry, and usually know the background of the bloodlines of the steer, where he came from, how he was raised. And so we take all of that into consideration, not just how they look, but longevity. Are they a good fit for the program? Are they not going to jump the fences? Are they not too gentle? We don't want a steer that's too gentle. It can be difficult because we are driving them from horseback, and we want to respect their flight zone. We want them to respond to that. That's how we're able to successfully drive them down the street. So it's a very simple process, just reaching out to us. You fill out the application, then we start having conversations and we see if it's a good fit. Timing is important because, we're retiring steers on a regular basis, and that's based off of veterinary recommendations on age, on temperament. You might think I'm crazy, but sometimes I can just feel it. Sometimes I can just feel that it's time for them to live, out on pasture the rest of their life. And so I just watch them really closely as we bring in new steers and retire some of the elderly steers.
And now let's hear from our advertisers.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink, we're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
Planning a live auction and want to reach more buyers? Hired Hand Live brings the power of the internet to your event, allowing bidders from anywhere to participate in real time. We specialize in integrating online bidding seamlessly with your live auction, ensuring that no one misses out.
Your livestock plus our technical expertise equals one successful auction. Let Hired Hand Live help you expand your reach and maximize your results. Visit hiredhandlive.com to learn more.
Hey, if you love From the Pasture with Hired Hand, why not go check out my podcast, The Big Iron Podcast with Andrew Shigori, where we dive into the world of registered Texas Longhorns and what it means to be an agriculture entrepreneur in the modern world, with a little southern flair, of course. Find the Big Iron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
So other than the traits that you listed that are obviously important for being part of a daily drive, do you try to diversify the herd in terms of like, oh, we don't have this hide type, or we don't have this horn set, or we haven't added these bloodlines? Is that some of what you consider as well when bringing in new animals?
We do. I have a soft spot for the youngster that has raised a Longhorn and wants to be part of the program. So a lot of our steers came from the TLBT members, or the students that have shown cattle in the industry, and that one's a hard select, because sometimes that's just for the reason because I think it's pretty special that a teenager is willing to donate an animal to this program. And so when we're selecting them, we're looking at all of those traits we just talked about, but then also looking into that relationship. How do we build a connection with that breeder? In other words, this is not a place to drop off a steer because the grass isn't growing, right? It's not. And we've been very particular on accepting steers. And there might be a breeder that's willing to wait, 3 to 5 years, or they've got one in mind and they know that steer needs to mature a little bit more before they come on board. So we're very interested in having those conversations. For the longevity and sustainability of the program, we have to have those steers lined up so that we can rotate on a regular basis.
So while, this probably shouldn't be a primary consideration, when the breeder who might be considering donating a steer thinks about the marketing kickback that they might get, how have you seen that benefit some of the previous breeders who have donated?
So most breeders who have donated over the years are doing that because they are so proud that their bloodline, that their brand is walking up and down Exchange Avenue twice a day. And they're able to tell that story with their colleagues and their partners and their relationships. We have trading cards for each steer, which showcases the ranch and the location of where that steer comes from. And just like we're doing right now, right? We're telling the story about where these steers came from. And I think that's what's been the most important thing for the donors. We do have a partnership program that is more monetary donation that allows, corporations or individuals or ranches to showcase the marketing side of their business. And so that's really taken off and launching quite a bit, because I think the more we get out front of those 9 million people and tell that story, yes, the cattle drive's fascinating. It is so impressive that they can stand on the sidewalk and see that. But we have to make sure that we're telling that story and communicating why it's here and where these steers came from.
Do you all ever accept steers from outside of the state?
We do. We've had steers from Florida, from Arizona, from Oklahoma, from Illinois. The list goes on. Washington State. So I think that's important to show that the Texas Longhorn breed is not only in Texas. And anytime that we're sharing the story of where these steers came from, there is always 100% chance that somebody on the avenue is from that state. And they feel closely connected to that particular steer just because he's from the same location or same region that they are. And I think that is really special. I mean, think about the breeder that lives in Illinois who says, I want to be part of the herd program, and gets that critter here where we're able to showcase that steer. I mean, that's passion. That's heart.
Well, aside from filling out the form and possibly having to be a little bit patient, what other advice would you give to breeders who want to get more involved with the herd, whether it be through donations or the donation of through monetary donations or the donation of an animal?
Because we are a nonprofit, we're constantly working on sustaining the program. The humane and animal treatment of both the steers and the horses is right there at the top of the list, because after all, that ensures their safety. And in order to do that in a district that's growing this much, it's really important that we have community support, whether it's from our local community, our Longhorn community, and those breeders in the industry have a voice. And so being involved, it could be a volunteer, it could be a spokesperson, an ambassador, monetary, physical donation, in-kind donation, whatever that looks like. What's so great about being able to contribute and support the program is we can customize it. We're a fairly small unit. So Visit Fort Worth is ready to help support that anytime it comes our way. Our board of directors are super supportive to make sure that the needs are met on the other side when someone is interested in being part of the program.
And is all of that information on the different avenues for support available on your website? Is there an email address that folks can reach out to learn more?
It is available on our website, which is fortworthherd.com. We also have the normal social media channels, and our administrative staff receives those requests through an email. It's fairly simple to remember. It's the herd, THEHERD, the herd at fortworth.com. And so, or picking up the phone and calling one of us. We certainly don't mind. Come see us, have a conversation with one of the drovers, and almost all of our contacts are made through the team.
Well, let's look ahead to the future. What are your hopes for the Fort Worth herd? How do you envision your herd changing over the next 25 years?
So we're in a pivotal moment in the district where the developer that I'm sure you all are maybe familiar with have done such a great job showcasing Mule Alley, Hotel Drover, Exchange Avenue. As development continues on West Exchange, the face of the Stockyards is becoming more popular. So we are at a crossroads where we have an opportunity to really have more interaction with the visitor as we design a new facility for the Longhorns, new facility for the horses. That project is called Phase 2 for the Majestic Heritage Partnership, whose property we reside on. I think it's important that they have embraced the herd for over 25 years, and they obviously are continuing to do so. So just working with breeders and specialists in the industry on what does that facility look like? What is best for the animal's health, as well as the marketing side of this program, and how do we sustain that over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What does that look like? Everybody always wants to see more cattle in the herd, but more cattle means more space, right? More resources, more hay. So we just have to have those conversations and see what that looks like. I know that our route is very important, so we're also looking at expanding that route so that we can better offer that experience to a larger number of people.
Well, I know I've learned a lot today, and I feel like I asked a lot of the questions that we had planned to cover, but is there anything I haven't asked that you feel is important that you would like our listeners to know?
You have done an excellent job forming these questions for me, and I sure appreciate that. I think that, it's important to know the visitor certainly cares about these animals and how they're treated, and the donor does too. So when an animal is donated to the program, I think it's important to just talk about their care and their treatment and their job, what their job looks like. We rotate cattle on pasture constantly, so they get a break from the city. And when they retire, they go out to pasture and live the rest of their life on pasture. And that's an important answer, especially to our visitor, because they always want to know where they go afterwards. There's an opportunity for them to go back to their donor. And I think that's important too, because that person, again, has built a lifelong relationship with us. So I appreciate all of your questions and giving me the opportunity to share that story.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this special episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. It's been a pleasure learning from Kristin Jaworski about the history, care, and dedication behind the Fort Worth herd. We hope today's conversation has given our listeners insight into the incredible legacy of these Texas Longhorns and inspired them to think about ways to support or get involved with the herd, whether through contributions or just taking a visit to the stockyards. To learn more about the Fort Worth herd, as Kristin said, you can visit their website or follow them on social media to stay connected with this living piece of the Old West. And until next time, take a moment to appreciate the pastures you roam and the traditions that keep them alive.
Imagine updating your website and managing your animals at the same time without needing tech experience. With Hired Hand software, it's that easy. Our user-friendly platform is designed specifically for breeders, allowing you to keep your site fresh and your animal records up to date in just a few clicks.
Let us simplify your digital chores while you focus on what you do best. Visit hiredhandsoftware.com and see just how easy it can be.